Welcome to my ANC TV. My name is Sipogazi Sowazi. We now have the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Deputy Minister Obed Bopela, in this very important day where we are commemorating Dada Nelson Mandela. But Obed, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sipogazi.
It's been a hectic 10 days for the ANC, for everybody actually. What would you say the ANC feels now that today is the final day?
Yes, it has been indeed a hectic 10 days, and in it myself I was supposed to have traveled to Ecuador to attend the World Youth Festival, which the ANC has been attending since 1949. And then I got told that with the death that has happened, we can no longer travel. And it was on Friday when we all got the news that night, and we're still reflecting as to what could have happened, and is it true? Even in the morning, we're still doubting that Friday. That remember, there's been so many stories. He's gone, no, he's still alive. Yes. So even at night, until the president spoke to the nation, I said it's real. And indeed, it has been hectic 10 days for the ANC because all of us had to come together and as leaders, as ministers, to say how do we give a befitting farewell to such a giant, a global icon? Is it going to be a great funeral? How are we going to manage it? You know, all those things come to you. And as calls came in from leaders of the world that I'm coming for the memorial, I'm coming for the funeral. And we're wondering, can we hold people, all of them, big world leaders, into a stadium called FNB at one place? So those were the questions that were running through our minds, but fortunately, indeed, everything went well. The whole nation mourned, and indeed, there has been so much tributes that have been coming from ordinary people, the famous people, the rich people, the poor people, the people of the world, Africa. Madiba has touched everybody, and I think even young children, because I saw children also on the street singing, "We love you, Tata Madiba, we love you, Nelson Mandela." It's so touching that the old man has really left a legacy.
Yes. And Obed, we had over 100 heads of state that came to bid farewell to Tata Mandela. How did that make you, as the ANC and as government, feel?
Well, look, Madiba was not just an ordinary person. As the president, Jacob Zuma, said now in the funeral, was an extraordinary man. And indeed, we saw how leaders of the world responded by wanting to be there in the soil where Madiba's led as a leader, and just to come and pay tributes. And by the way, they all wanted to speak. We had to manage that element, that at least represent a region. Obama will represent the Americas, including Canada and everybody.
Yes.
And then somebody for Africa, so that at least every region is represented. Because if we had allowed all of them to speak, 100 of them, it means that memorial service will have had to be run for 3 days. For them to really express and talk about the men they know, the men they've worked with, the men they admired, the men that they've read so much about whilst he was still in prison until the day he was released, the men who entered the global stage and say reconciliation and peace in South Africa against all adversity. But then he managed to bring that miracle. That's why South Africa was called a miracle. Yes. And he had that magic, Madiba magic as they used to call it. And then indeed, who would not want to be there just side by side with South Africa as they mourn? Just to say a few remarks. All of them wanted to do so, but unfortunately, time was not on our side. But in their own spaces, they did honor him. In Cuba, a whole week, 3 days was set aside for mourning of Nelson Mandela. Tanzania also did set aside 3 days to mourn the death of Nelson Mandela. Venezuela also is one other country, even though they could not make it to the memorial, they set aside 3 days of national mourning for Nelson Mandela. So there might be quite a number of others that may not have pronounced or announced to us. And we are just saying to the world, thank you, and thank you very much for honoring the men that belonged to you. But he was our father of democracy. He was Utata Giti, he was our leader. And we so very much thankful that at least that solidarity that we have shown during apartheid is still the solidarity that you were able to demonstrate when we lost one of our best. And we just thank you very much to the world.
Finally, with Obed, what would you say you remember the most about Dad?
There are two things that I remember him for, because I was the provincial leader of Gauteng at that time as a provincial secretary. And two incidences happened in my time of office. We had a meeting of the general membership of the ANC, all branches in Gauteng, and we had asked him to come and address us. And we scheduled a meeting for 10 o'clock at the Bramfordine Recreation Center. And we then said to people, come at 9, but knowing that the meeting starts at 10.
Yes.
Only 200 people came in, not 800 that we had looked at and then we were anticipating. So Tatu Madiba, being him, he then arrived 10 to 9. And we said to him, Tata, can we take you to the holding room and wait for people? He says, I am not going to wait here. You said 10 o'clock and 10 o'clock must be 10 o'clock. People must learn to respect time.
Yes.
And then indeed, 10 o'clock hit. And he said, can you instruct marshals to close all the doors? Those who are late should not come in. And I'll address those who are here because they are disciplined, they respect time, and I have to honor them for that. And he addressed the 100 people. By the time he finished, he says, now you can open the doors. And a flood of people came in. He said, thank you very much for listening to me. And then he walked, to go back to his car to go to another next meeting. The next thing was the leadership that he presented when Chris Hani died. That morning, after we received the news, all of us, some rushed to Don Park to go and look, and indeed it was real. Television was beaming, radio was running with the stories. We had a meeting at Shell House then before we moved to Little House. And in the meeting, the province was there, myself was there, Tolga Squad as chairperson and secretary. And we're discussing who can address the nation. The youth were angry, the nation was angry, a time bomb was ticking, that anything can happen. In us, we're seeing bloodshed, we're seeing a civil war starting, where South Africans, white and black, were just gonna tear each other apart. And all of us, we looked around and said, Tata Madiba, no one else but you. You can only be the one that can go to the national television and speak. He agreed, and indeed he went to the national television and called all South Africans, hold your breath, don't do anything, don't revenge, don't tear the country apart. This is but one of those incidents that could have happened, that was going to happen. Yes, we are all angry, as you are, but for the sake of the many, many other people that have died, we're just on the eve of us reaching a decision. I'm going to use Chris Hani's death to ensure that we get an election date, and he got it. And that's why South Africa is prospering today, with whatever challenges that are there, poverty, inequality, unemployment, some of them structurally inherited from 1994. It's not easy to move out, but we are on the right path, and Tata has left a legacy that we must all live and then to ensure therefore that we emulate him. We know we can't fit in the shoes, they're too big, but at least whatever shoes you put on, or closer to those big shoes, giant shoes, that are there, at least to keep on correcting yourself as we go along the path towards creating a better life for our people.
Thank you very much, Obed.
Thank you very much.